This is the IoT for All Media Network. Hello, friends in IoT. Welcome to Let's Connect, the newest podcast in the IoT for All Media Network. I am Ken Briota, Editorial Director for IoT for All, and your host. If you enjoy this episode, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, and comment on all your favorite podcasting platforms. And to keep up with all the IoT insights you need, visit iotforall.com. Before we get into our episode, the IoT market will surpass $1 trillion in the next few years. Is your business ready to capitalize on this new and growing trend? Use Leverage's powerful IoT solutions development platform to efficiently create turnkey IoT products that you can white label and resell under your own brand. Help your customers increase operational efficiency, improve customer experience, or even unlock new revenue streams with IoT. To learn more, go to iotchangeseverything.com. That's iotchangeseverything.com. Now, let's connect. My guest today is David Su, the CEO and co-founder of Atmosic, and we are going to talk a little bit about batteries. David, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
It is a real pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining me. In case folks aren't familiar with you, David, or with Atmosic and sort of where you guys fit into IoT, can you tell us a little bit about your background and sort of what what you guys work on?
Sure. The overall team, we have been working on connectivity solutions for over the past 2 or 3 decades as well. So overall, what we try to do essentially is create a solution that is significantly lower power consumption than what you find on the marketplace, thereby extending your battery life significantly. In addition, because our power consumption is so much lower than everybody else, what you realize is that it's much easier now to harvest energies and then create solutions that can be battery free or have battery that will last the entire duration of a given product. So you can see the two pieces, the low power and the energy harvesting.
I find battery technology fascinating. I was one of those kids who made the giant potato chain battery when I was a kid, and I made a little electromagnetic generator that I hooked up to my bicycle and tried to make charging batteries and all sorts of stuff. I messed around with all that stuff when I was a kid because I find energy storage really interesting. And the development of battery technology and energy storage technology is sort of the next big hardware innovation that everybody's trying to accomplish, it seems like. And we're not quite there. Like some of the Tesla batteries are really, really cool and are doing some stuff. But I don't think, at least from what I've seen, we're not quite there yet. But the intersection of battery and energy storage with IoT is really the pinnacle of the existing battery technology. Like, not getting into what we might get to in terms of storage, but with what we have right now, the idea of leveraging IoT for more efficient use of energy and for lower energy use, and also for better energy use and for more efficiency, seems like the sort of best of what we can do now. And what I'm interested in is how we're doing that. What are some of the ways that we're getting this lower energy use and still getting enough function to make the IoT devices work the way we need them to?
Right. As you mentioned, that we are not developing new battery technology, but in itself, what we're doing here essentially is making the best use of the batteries we have and allowing the chance to provide the overall solution that will have much longer battery lives, that we don't have to throw away batteries on a regular basis. As you know, I think the last estimate I saw in the US alone, I think we're throwing away like 3 billion batteries a year. Which is brutal. I think 100 a second. 100 more being thrown away every second as we speak. But what we do essentially is first reduce the power consumption. And power consumption itself, in many ways, is very careful design techniques that we have developed over the past many years now. And that allows us to consume about 3 to 5 times lower power than what you find with competing products. So our first solution is connectivity solution using Bluetooth, which is everywhere. And our solution now gives you so much longer battery life.
Sure.
So there's the first piece of the puzzle. But if you want to further extend your battery life to infinity, then you need a way to generate the additional source of energy. The way I look at it is that if your power consumption need is quite low, the lower it is, the easier it is. When I move my hand around, I'm actually generating all kinds of energy. If I need a watt of energy, then now I need to really like crank something really hard.
Right.
But if I need milliwatts, it's a little bit easier. In our solution, on the average now, we are talking about microwatts of energy now. So that makes it so much easier. Now you can harvest energy, and then now your battery life will last forever.
Yeah. And it sounds like most of this innovation is in hardware, is in making the hardware require less energy and therefore can be charged via solar or kinetic.
Kinetic energy, and you can do RF, you can do heat as well.
Sure. And is there also a software component?
Absolutely, because what you have essentially is that you want to design it from the system level tops down. The most important criteria actually is very simple. Do not burn energy when you don't need to. That is probably the number one saving grace. But to do that well takes a fair amount of work. As you see, how do you know you don't need to talk? So that makes a difference. So
right.
With system design, and as you know, this day and age, the system operation is almost completely controlled by software. So we definitely have a very large software component. Now you need to do that. Even within the software, how do you do it in the most efficient manner? So it's a conjunction of hardware and software in the system level. And for example, in our system now, we have created these different power domains, meaning that when you want full function, you burn the most amount of energy. And if you look at a given solution sitting there, if I don't need to do full function, I should turn off as much as I can. So we create stages for you to say, now I'm waiting for a sensor. Let me just only turn on that sensor node. If I have important things to do, then I wake up the next stage and the next stage and the next stage. So right. It's a combination.
That's really, really cool. It sort of speaks to the heart of what IoT is good at, sort of deciding the decision tree path. One of our past episodes, we were talking a lot about sort of how machine learning and AI helps us create these sort of decision trees. And I feel like if it's not in the tech now, a path where AI is doing a lot of this decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you sort of have to decide where you put your AI computation, how much you do at the edge, in the battery operated device, like a coin cell operated device, what you actually moved over to your local compute or your cloud. Simple things like imagine a voice control remote control, the push to talk remote. Now the question is, how much of it should you do locally? How much of it's cheaper if you just compress data and send it away to the cloud? So it turns out that's what almost everybody does today. So you press a button, you talk to it, and locally, you will digitize, compress the data, you send it through your wireless link, and you send it to the cloud. The cloud does all your speech recognition and sends it back as a command to your system. So that turned out to be a good use of, as you mentioned, who does what and how.
What effect, if any, does all of the sort of strategies for battery consumption reduction have on things like latency or speed of process or anything like that? Is there a trade-off there?
The short answer is you should not, because from a consumer point of view, the moment you tell people that this is a light bulb, but it's really dim, it's not going to work. So from a consumer point of view, the goal of the engineering is to provide a solution that is seamless.
People want it all.
Yes. Yeah. In a way, it's good because that allows you to be more creative in coming out with the right engineering trade-off solution to get you the right performance. But as you mentioned earlier about software, this is in many cases the intelligence comes in, right? Having the ability to say, I know you are just sitting there on the table, not doing much. Why do you need to do all of the things that is power consuming?
Right.
The staging goes a long way to help you.
Let's sort of broaden the focus a little bit and talk about some of the environmental impact type of things, because I am a wide-eyed optimist about the future of IoT and the impact that this industry can have on sort of improving global conditions in a lot of areas. But I think environmentally is a big one.
I agree. I think we are all guilty in part. as consumer and as engineers creating solutions without thinking through what happens down the line. I totally agree with you in the sense that one comment I make to people essentially is that when you go out buying things, you almost seldom think about the cost of ownership.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to actually convert my whole house to LED lighting. I was late, sorry, for the environment.
Yep.
I did.
We all were, honestly. Everybody was late. I think that the energy discussion and the benefits that we can get through IoT on reducing energy consumption and on reducing wastables like batteries, as you were saying before, is huge. But I also think that there's a benefit that IoT can find that we're not quite at yet in terms of routing energy resources. And what I mean by that is that if we can get a sense of the power grid in an area or a microgrid or however, it gets developed, what areas of that geography are running on long life or infinite life functionally batteries, so they require less energy, and which ones are going to require more, we can get the power of IoT and AI to start intelligently routing power to places and therefore using less storehouse. And this gets us back to batteries because we've got to store this energy somehow, and especially if we're talking about renewable. Right. Things like that. I won't get into nuclear, but we should. Hot takes, we should. But let's talk about how battery technology, or at the very least IoT leverage of existing technology, helps us environmentally on more efficient use of power supply and more intelligent.
I like that comment you make about more intelligent use of power supply, more intelligent use of battery, because in my mind is we should look at battery as somewhat of a precious resource. It's more precious than line power. Everything's precious, but it's all relative. There's that more global optimization, meaning that if you know your sensing node on your window sensor, open and closed window sensor is precious battery power, then you should try to minimize that power consumption in its node. And your Alexa machine that is plugged into the wall socket is less precious. If you have a trade-off between a battery operated function and a device that is not battery operated, then being able to offload correctly in the system design goes a long ways to make things better. And I think the world is actually doing the right thing. We are all moving in the right direction. I'm optimistic like you are, in the sense that we will create solutions that are better over time. The only thing that worries me a little bit is our appetite for consumption is growing too. So there's that race.
When we get to the point where we can reliably store 1 year of power for a typical household in the US, it has to be the US, then we will have reached a level of battery technology that I think becomes globally sustainable. Because if you think about the battery consumption of a typical household in the US for a year, their power consumption rather, if you take that battery and you ship it to almost anywhere else in the world, you can run a household for 10 years. So my point is that by taking the overconsumption of not just the US, a lot of countries, and then use good battery technology to distribute that power elsewhere. Right. And also it creates a whole new economy, because if you think about the equator, which is typically where a lot of the poorest parts of the world are, and you say, hey, you guys get all the sunlight, charge all the batteries, sell them to the rest of the world. Now we've created a whole new economy. We've created a whole new system.
And overall, the overall vision essentially is that how can we make sure that the overall battery usage and the definition of battery changes? It's, as you say, not a disposable component that has no additional impact to us beyond what we do on a daily basis. Yep. Making sure that whenever we consume the battery, we should think a little bit harder.
We're getting near the end of our time, David. I want to sort of give you the floor here. If you could take our listeners and send them away with an idea, what would be the takeaway that they should think about in their own business development and thinking about power for their own devices?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. In my mind, there are two things. One is, as I said earlier, the important thing as a consumer point of view is that when we do make our purchase decision, think of the cost of ownership, the longer term of not just what you pay for at the cash register, but what your overall cost will be over the lifespan of the product itself. Meaning that how many times you need to change your battery and what the impact it is overall. And then the second part of it is to the more engineering committee out there in the audience, in the sense that watching out for power consumption is important. We as a team can make a difference in this industry to make sure that we have a more sustainable world for generations to come.
That is a wonderful sentiment to end on, so I'm not even going to add anything. David Hsu, CEO, co-founder of Atmosync, thank you so much for being my guest today. It's been a real pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks again to all of you listening out there. I hope you've enjoyed our discussion, and if you have, please make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our episodes. We post every week, and I hope you'll leave us a rating, review, and comment on your favorite podcasting platform. If you'd like to suggest a guest, please click on the link in the description. And we also have a great sister podcast on our network called the IoT for All podcast, so make sure you check that out.
Hey Ken, let me jump in real quick and introduce your audience to another awesome show on the IoT for All Media Network, the show that started it all, the IoT for All podcast, where I bring on experts from around the world to showcase successful digital transformation across industries. We talk about use cases and IoT solutions available in the market and provide an opportunity for those companies to share advice to help the world better understand and adopt IoT. So if you're out there listening and haven't checked it out, be sure to go check out the IoT for All podcast, available everywhere.
Thank you, Ryan. Now get back to your show. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Let's Connect. I've been Ken Briota, editorial director of IoT for All, and your host. Our music is Sneaking on September by Otis McDonald. And this has been a production of the IoT for All Media Network. Take care of yourselves. You are listening to the IoT for All Media Network.